we have our star for our next interview. Come on in. Just like let me make sure that
I feel like home here.
you feel like home. Why?
I had a beer.
Nice. All
A
right.
Belgian beer? Brewed in Belgium.
Okay.
The Danish one, so like out of breath.
So I don't need to ask you how you're doing. I guess you're doing pretty.
I'm
fine.
doing well. How are you doing? Like you always ask other people.
I'm tired, but I'm alright. You know, like I've been here with this really like hot lights, but
You have like a nice warm.
yeah,
you know,
but
stuff.
it feels very special, so it's good. It's good.
Excellent.
So basically, we are live streaming to the live audience. Since it's the first time we're doing a hybrid event,
Sure.
right? Like streaming, and people are watching, and some people had. So your talk was quite a long time ago, so I had to save your questions, and
Sounds great.
let's just jump right into it,
I
right?
just wanted to ask you, like, how do you feel about the conference?
Your
No.
the conference in general.
It's like because you always ask other people. I really
Yeah.
care about you.
You-
I want to ask you.
That's very sweet. Thank you. For me, actually said this to people. Like, I am now very focused on game development, and I was graduated as a graphic designer. So for me, going back to my roots and talking about general as a project, as a way to care about user experience in general, it's always refreshing. Because
Right.
whenever you're focused too much on an aspect, especially on game development, it's too much about code, about technical aspect of it, about the creativity. But it's always good to think about the user.
Sure.
And I code way too much. And this was a great break of it, and a lot of interesting talks. Your talk was also amazing.
Thank you.
And then we can talk more about it, sort of, because I actually have some personal questions after I
Go
have
for
the
it.
digital.
I'm listening. I'm
So,
all in.
Actually, one of the questions I think we don't need anymore because you did made available your slides, right? I think this is the Dropbox links. So there was a discussion question while you were presenting that if I remember was Liz from the chat that asked. She said, I appreciate setting some of the forms we've seen as a gold standard, but how do we all balance perfect design with the realities of the constraints of time constraints?
Time constraints.
Yes,
Right.
spending hours on a form means we likely have to sacrifice functionality somewhere else.
True.
For example, anything animation related takes days or weeks
A
for a
non-specialist.
non-specialist.
Yes.
So it's more, it's not necessarily a question, but actually just like a discussion.
Yeah, that's a very good point because I feel that for me personally, forms are probably one of the few elements that we actually have at our disposal as designers to really make a significant impact.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's really easy to communicate the value of a form. I mean, it sounds a little bit ridiculous. I mean, you have your design, you have your visual style guides, you have your animation, you have your buttons, you have your everything. So it's kind of it can be very impactful. The visual part, the aesthetics can be very impactful. But in terms of conversion, in terms of engagement, in terms of getting the sign-ups and getting the money rolling, forms are just critical. So it's really interesting for me that I see more teams getting funds and getting time to work around forms just because you can really kind of correlate it quickly with the return on investment. And so in that regard, I see teams kind of almost prioritizing or emphasizing the importance of forms over other things. However, of course, it takes time. So I think that if you can somehow connect the dots and say, let's take a look at our KPIs. Our KPIs will be, to decrease the abandonment, for example, or to increase engagement, or to increase the conversion, or to increase lifetime value of a customer. And in that regard, you could say, okay, let's work on the form and try to do just that. Because in the end, once you bring people into the form, you want to make sure that people who have, who are abandoning for some reason, get picked up. And so you, as a result, really bring them through this, finish line, so they actually successfully complete the checkout and stuff. And so when you start talking to your managers, to your colleagues about the importance of forms, as long as you can tie it in with some KPIs that they care about or that your management cares about, you can actually get some time and get a nod for, yeah, go ahead, let's try that.
That was a really good answer because it's really objective, and
Yes.
I guess it's a reality of most companies.
I think it's very normal that we kind of have to deliver by yesterday. That's perfectly fine. But I find that in many ways this is almost like a little gateway to start getting things done better. It's very easy to say, "Oh, we'll have to clean up the homepage," but it's going to be very, very hard to convince anybody because there are so many stakeholders and who are interested in that particular part of the experience. But if you say, "Let's try to improve numbers," by kind of diving into something like a product page maybe, or again forms in a checkout, you can actually then kind of go backwards and get to the point where company understand that maybe if we invest into this and avoid abandonments, and a very typical situation would be, sorry if this is too long of an answer,
No worries.
when you have a checkout and then the button for submitting a form is disabled because you want everybody to kind of fill in everything correctly, but it doesn't really communicate what is wrong if a button is disabled. It would be better to communicate what exactly happened, how to fix it. So if you just target this and try to improve the experience by not disabling the button and showing the errors, you can really measure it. I mean, you can really see that people who just left because they couldn't succeed, all of a sudden pay. And that could be just kind of a starting point for you to kind of move back to the shopping cart page, and maybe then to the product page, and maybe then to the actual category page, and so on.
That's great. And I think also, well, my personal opinion is also that attached to that is also proven results.
Yes.
If you bring like KPIs and also like KPIs in here, the proven results, you're bringing the two perfect points to be like, this is like a hypothesis, but here's our results from other companies and this talk I saw in Design Matters. So, that kind of thing. There's a question here from Frederick says to you, where can we hear more of you?
More of me?
Really
I think I speak like all the time. I think way too much. I think I should be just, frankly, it was very interesting. It's a very interesting question because I was always on a silent mode for the last, 4 months or so. And I'm sorry to be the kind of bad guy here in the room, but March and April, the lockdown months, were incredible for me. Not because I felt like, I need less people in my life, but I kind of tried to find a way to be busy, I guess. And so I got and dived really deep into all kind of things, from e-commerce to accessibility to front-end optimization, all those things. So I really learned a lot, and I was writing a lot, and I was taking notes, and I was connecting the dots and reading. So it was really wonderful for me to be silent for a while. And so that was great. But now I feel like there is quite a bit of stuff that I spend a bit of time thinking of. And so there are a couple of talks that I'm looking forward to give this year. Not because I just like giving talk, although I do, frankly, but because I feel like there is a lot of interesting, unusual things that are happening. Just yesterday, actually, I discovered this page, which is if you happen to be online now, which I think you are, go
probably.
to Coffee Lab Eindhoven website. That's an incredible website because they have 4 hamburger icons on that page. I mean, I'm not even joking. It's like 4 different hamburger icons. I think it's intentional. And it got me thinking, is it a good design or is it a bad design? How do I know? Right? And so I like going to websites, to random websites, and then collect some notes. I always go, like every Friday, I go to Japanese websites, and then I go to Cyrillic websites, and I can paste somewhere else for you to go as well.
Yes, we can do that.
Yeah, and that's just incredible because you really end up with a very different view on things. And so I like doing that, and I collected a lot of stuff over the last 4 months. So please do expect a few more talks and stuff from me. We also run online workshops. We also will probably be doing something like that with Design Matters at some point. Frankly, I love online. Do you like online? Do you like online?
I love online.
Yeah, look like that.
I love online. I love online.
I mean, I'm perfectly fine with having both offline and online. We had this workshop just a couple of days ago. We had people from Uruguay and Japan and Australia in the same team working on an exercise collaboratively in Miro, which is one of the collaborative kind of things. And wow, this is just unbelievable.
That's awesome. So basically, can people follow you somewhere to like see?
Yes, if you go to Smashing Mag Twitter account, you will find us. Also, we have a little magazine that you might want to read, and Smashing Mag. Subscribe to our newsletter. We always post some stuff about what is happening and what's coming up next.
Awesome, thank you. I have my last question, which is my personal question. Which, when I was studying design, I was a very objective kid. Let's call it kid. I was just like looking forward to all the things that would actually teach me how to illustrate or do game design. That was very practical. But I had one specific class that focused a lot on testing and using forms for tests, and how basically the class focused a lot on how to build test forms that were unbiased in scale. So I know you talked a lot about like sliders or fields, and this particular, I was going to give one example where like when you're doing tests for a product that you're building, it's something that you're designing, and you ask people, how do you feel about this? From 0 to 5, that's already biased, because what scale is that, right? Like, what does 2 mean to me, and what does 2 mean
Yes.
to you if there are no
Good call.
extremes?
Yes.
And so in that specific class, we learned that the best way to approach it is to go to -2 to 2, because then you have like a spectrum
Extremes.
that has a 0 in the middle, which is neutral.
Yes.
And then the others is more clear to understand. So what's your I guess your insight, or do you ever read like approached it in some way of like building something that creates an environment that's unbiased, because you have to design your product or something?
That's a good point. When we do testing, user testing, a very common way for me to do this so-called silent testing, where essentially you have a task for your attendees, and then you tell them, please find a particular piece of information and just walk us through this, a speak aloud protocol, right? And then I monitor what's happening, and then we also record a video of, not of the person necessarily, but like of the screen. And then I go in slow motion, really trying to understand, this person kind of circled around that button, never clicked on it, and then scrolled down and then returned back to it. Why did that happen? Maybe they are not certain about what this button is supposed to do, things like that. And I kind of really try to study this screencast a lot. This is like, I love it, absolutely. I learned a lot from this, kind of really going in slow motion there. I try not to do surveys, although we do have a few things where we would ask a so-called system usability scale, where essentially it's some sort of a formula and a paradigm where you can ask a couple of questions. It's 10 questions altogether. The first question would be, do you find that this website is attractive and easy to use? And then on the other hand, you would have the next question being, do you find this website difficult to find information in? So it's always a positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative. By the end of it, after you answer 10 questions, you kind of get some sort of a score, because people will be either somewhere in between, negative and positive. So it's not, we try not to be skewed this way. And then there is a formula how you can calculate a score. And it's a famous thing. If you start typing system usability score or scale, something you will find it. And it gives you a score between 1 and 100. So if you're beyond 69, I believe, then you're in a good usability, so to say. Below that means pretty bad. But it's really important to kind of alternate between positive statement, negative statement, positive state, negative. But I would never ask something like, can you, on the scale from 1 to 5, how useful is the website? It is very biased. One thing that you can do there, I think there's also a formula for that. For every positive statement that somebody gives, you need to detract something, because people try to be a bit more positive and they will not tell you something negative. Things like that. Overall, I like talking to people, and when you give them the freedom to express what they think, and we always tell them, this is not very ready yet, and please give us honest feedback, and you will get a coffee as a result. And don't worry, the designers,
cookies as a result.
yes, and the designers of this are not in the room, so don't worry. When you give people the freedom to express their opinion, they go to extreme. They tell me sometimes the stories of their life and more, and also what they think about the interface and how they would design it. And so, just really being kind and, I guess, friendly to people, and really listening to what they have to say.
Yeah,
I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I can really relate to that, because I think it's very similar for the gaming testing, which comes to like the silent testing of trying to detach from this design ego of trying to be like, go to the right, go to the left, and more of like watching. And I guess, like you said, like recording is very useful.
Yes.
And even some people are using like eye tracking.
Eye tracking. Oh, that's very expensive though.
Yeah.
We wanted to do that, but it's
crazy.
That's really, really expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, just having a screen recording usually is enough for me to kind of get a hint of what is going on. And then we take designers, developers sitting together for like 1 hour. We do a little prototype, and then we just bring more people in. The best way, by the way, to bring people in is to find times and places where people are extremely bored. Like, the more bored they are,